Hello, listeners. Kathy Lawless here, Life Story Curator, bringing you this podcast series, How Did I Get Here? A series of interviews designed for people just starting out in their careers, in transition, or possibly feeling stuck, and giving them access to the stories from people who have been there, done that. They've been through that transition, they've been through being stuck, and they've come out the other end. And hopefully now people can be inspired to learn from these stories and find new ways forward. Today, I'm very excited to be interviewing Gayla Wick. Hello, Gayla.
Hi.
And Gayla has got a fascinating business and a fascinating story. She is a love relationship coach and author. And I can't wait to dive into what that means. But listeners, as you know, I always like to start with my icebreaker questions first so that we get to know Gayla a little bit more as a person. So Gayla, if you would share with us where you grew up, how many siblings, where you are in the birth order, and how you think that influenced you as a person.
Sure. Well, I was born and raised in West Virginia, and not a lot of people sometimes can relate to West Virginia. I know when I went to college, people said, "Oh, I've been to Virginia Beach," and I would always think, "Wow, maybe you should take geography over again." But the other thing that I can remind people about West Virginia is remember the John Denver song "Country Roads"? That was about West Virginia.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
It's one of my favorite songs. And so I was the oldest, and I had two sisters.
Oh, all girls, huh?
Yes, yes. So that was a lot of fun.
And how? What's the age difference between you and your sisters?
Well, actually, there is a pretty big gap with my younger sister. So there's 21 months between the middle sister and myself, and then there's 12 years before the
Wow.
little one comes along.
Wow. So in a way, she was almost an oldest or an only on her own because of the 12-year difference.
Well, it probably
You guys
seems that
might-
way, but
Yeah.
she was definitely treated like the baby. So I don't know. Yeah.
So, and did you play sports or were you into music?
I was so not into sports. I was the anti-sports person. I hated gym class. But I will say what I did love a lot was singing.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I got into the choir. My high school choir was quite a fun experience, and it was pretty different from a lot of high school choirs. Our high school choir actually was invited to be live on the NBC Today Show with Barbara Walters.
Well, you all must have been very good then.
We were very good, and the town that I grew up in is actually the home of Mother's Day. It's Grafton, West Virginia, and it's where Anna Jarvis dedicated a beautiful chapel on Main Street to all mothers, and it became known worldwide as Mother's Day. And so for Mother's Day, we were invited to go to New York City. You might imagine a group of high school kids from a small town going to New York City. But we were literally live on the NBC Today Show with Barbara Walters. It was quite the experience.
Wow, how special.
It was. It was.
Wow, very cool. So, what would you say that you have oldest sister or oldest sibling kind of tendencies, personality traits?
Well, I probably have to admit to that. Absolutely. I'm I'm very much a take charge and tell other people what to do. It's probably what my sisters would say.
Well, I'm a middle, and so I have two
Mm.
sisters, and we were born all my oldest and youngest born three years apart, exactly on the same day.
Oh,
So mom had three kids exactly in 3 years, and I'm in the middle. So it's funny. We very much all have the stereotypical birth order personalities.
isn't that it's always interesting to me that that
Yeah,
happens, but I
yeah,
think especially with the oldest, you are born with being asked to take care of the others and
yeah.
making sure that you're the big girl. So that's definitely me. And various points in my life. My sisters will be happy to tell you how bossy I was, I'm sure.
And then other times how wonderful you are because you were just, someone that they could lean on and talk to and had been there, done that, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. They do come to me for advice, which I'm more than happy to give.
Yeah. Are you close to them now?
Yes, yes, we're very close.
Very cool. Okay, on a little different note, on the fun meter, on a scale of 1 to 5, one being couch potato and five being life of the party, where do you put yourself?
Well, I'm definitely not a couch potato, and I can be the life of the party. Being an introvert, I'm probably not usually, unless I'm super comfortable. But I would say I would give myself a high rating on the fun meter because at this time of my life, I'm just having the best time of my life. I'm married
Wow.
to the love of my life, and I love helping women find the love relationship of their dreams. So I'm having a great time.
So you're loving life. Awesome. So should
Yeah.
we give you a 5?
You should give me a 5. Yes.
Okay, we'll put you at a 5 there. On a same scale, 1 to 5, but on a risk taking meter, where would you put yourself?
I would have in the past told you that I'm pretty conservative and I really don't take a lot of risks, but I started thinking about that, and I realized that I've taken a lot of risk, especially in the last almost 2 decades of my life. I took a big risk to change careers and to put myself out there. I authored a book. I developed a coaching program. I really put my heart and soul into helping women in that vulnerable time in their life, especially when they can't find love or they've been heartbroken by love. And so I think that's a pretty big risk. So again, I'd probably give myself a 5 right now. I don't jump out of
I,
airplanes though. I will tell you that.
I was going to give you a 7.
Oh,
Um,
all right. I'll take it. I'll take it.
as a fellow entrepreneur launching a business, it's really hard to put yourself out there, and you put yourself out there in a big way, in a very, I would say, non-traditional or unconventional kind of arena, even. And so I think it's even more risky sometimes. But that again, that's me as an outsider looking out. Um, but I do like to ask this question because it does come down to how people are putting themselves out there, and what I'm finding is how people many times don't feel like they're taking a risk, but they feel other people think they're taking a risk because they feel like, oh, it's calculated because I did this research or because I have this level of experience and comfort. And yeah, it's an interesting question and answer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so as well, because I think when you talk about risk, people just automatically think about certain things and they don't necessarily think about it with respect to themselves. And the women I coach are certainly taking a risk. They're putting their love life in my hands. They're putting their own development as a woman into my hands. So they're certainly
Mhm.
taking a risk.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned the airplane. My last interview, she says, oh, I love to skydive. So I'm, I guess with adrenaline activities or something she called it, she's a 5. But in her business, she called herself much more conservative, even though again she started her own business too. So it's very interesting. I love those two questions
Mhm.
because it really helps me as we kind of go through the rest of this conversation about who you are and how did I get here. So, speaking of that, let's transition now to talk a little bit about what it means to be a love relationship coach. I know what it means to be an author, but tell us a bit about what you do.
I work with single women who have been heartbroken that they can't find love, or who have been through a heartbreak or a divorce and really know that they have so much love to give, but they're struggling. They've maybe tried online dating, they've tried blind dates, they've tried all kinds of things, and it hasn't worked. And the women that I tend to work with tend to be late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. I even have a very adorable 75-year-old client who's
Awesome.
still looking for love. And they just don't know what to do. It's just not fun trying to figure it out by yourself. And so I realized that a number of years ago. And so that's how I got into this. And I wanted all women who want love to know that they can have it. And I discovered a process, and I'll call it the secret sauce. And so that's why I love sharing it.
Wow. That is so cool. And as you and I, when we talked before, you talked about, you're with your love of your life. So you're walking your talk here.
I am walking my talk, but I will tell you, it was not always that way. I call myself a former true love skeptic. I thought it was all a bunch of a hooey. I thought those lovey-dovey, sickening cards were just the worst. And I had a really bad taste in my mouth about love after a failed marriage.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a great transition. So let's talk a little bit about, how did I get here? How did you get to where you are? So when you were a young person, growing up, let's say junior high-ish, what did you want to be when you grew up? I mean, was it, since you were such a skeptic then, I'm assuming you found this career later in life. What did you want to be when you grew up, when you were a little girl?
I wanted to be a police officer slash detective. Can you
Ooh,
believe that?
that's quite
And
different. I can't wait to get through the whole story.
yes. And I accomplished that mission, generally speaking. So I went to Northeastern University because in high school I thought I knew what I wanted to be from the time I was 8 years old. And I
Wow.
read I read a book about the first detectives in America, and I feel like from a personality perspective, I had a very strong sense of justice. And I didn't like seeing anyone mistreated or abused in any way. And so I thought, when I read the book, I thought, wow, those detectives were fantastic for the country. They caught all of those really big time criminals. And I thought, you know what, that's what I'm going to do. And I never changed my mind. And in high school, I read about Northeastern University, and they had a highly acclaimed criminal justice program. So I told my parents, I'm going to Boston, I'm going to go to Northeastern University. I'm going to get a degree in criminal justice. I'm going to go work for a police department, and I'm going to be a crime fighter, essentially.
Wow. And you knew that at age 8, and then
I did.
that passion and drive carried you through all the way through college.
Absolutely. I got a job as the first female police officer in Concord, Massachusetts. Police department, had worked with the detectives on several of my, basically it was internships. I don't know if you've heard of Northeastern, but they do a cooperative education program where you go to school for 5 years, but you go to school for, after your first year, you go to school for 6 months, and then you work for 6 months, or you go to school for a quarter, 3 months, and then you work for 3 months, and they help you get a job. So um, they weren't too helpful back in the day when I told them that I wanted to work in the police department and I wanted to be a police cadet and a special police officer. And they actually told me, well, honey, those jobs are reserved for the local kids. And I said, well, we'll see about that. So
Mm.
I knew the police departments that had this program. And so I called them up, went to interview with the police chief. He said, I have spent years looking for a female police officer. You're hired.
Wow. So they didn't say it was because of your gender. They said it was because they wanted local kids to get the internships.
Yes, I thought that was really a horrible thing to say. And I just wasn't going to have that, because what they
Yeah.
wanted to do was stick me in a filing room at the courthouse where I would get to file papers for my entire assignment, which I thought, well, if you think I'm going to file papers, no.
Yeah. Well, and I'm paying the same money that the local kids are paying for this education, and I don't get the same hands-on experience.
Yeah, exactly. And I had plenty of, I got a lot of grant money. I studied really hard. I was there to study. I was not there to party. And so, but I still had I had student debt at the end of the day. And the good thing, I was able to afford college, because when you go on these assignments with police departments or wherever you're working, you get paid.
Oh, so they're paid internships.
Yes,
Wow.
you get paid. And so it saved me, because I was the first person in my family to ever go to college, and I was going to do it.
Wow. Well, congratulations. And then you
Well,
did
thank
it.
you. I did it. I did it, and then when I graduated with my bachelor's degree, I was offered a graduate assistantship, which is basically a free master's degree, and I knew how much that was going to cost, and so I have a master's degree in criminal justice with a major in administration and planning, and that's how I gravitated to private security. It was a little more sane, a little more stable, and a little more interesting actually than being a police officer. So I
Oh.
spent 25 years in corporate security, as I say, managing guns, gates, and guards.
I hadn't thought about corporate security being in those three terms before.
I know. It's kind of yeah. It was an interesting transition. I actually helped develop the program. I worked with the dean and the associate dean of the College of Criminal Justice at the time, being one of their top students. They asked my advice, and I said, these are the business courses that you need to put in this new master's program." I don't know who I thought I was, Kathy. I just thought I had an opinion, and they were gonna have the benefit of it. It was an interesting time. So I said I spent 25 years in it. I loved it. It was a great career, very full of masculine energy. And
Yeah, I would
I,
guess you were many times the only woman in the room for
yes,
many years, probably.
yes, it was frequently that, and and there was some good times, and there were some really not good times. And so I decided at the end of that, some things had happened in my life, like a divorce, and shortly thereafter meeting the love of my life that I am deliriously happily married to after 15 years. So it was time to hang that up and move on.
And that's when you started your current business.
Yes, yes, it was not intentional. I had no idea. I had no thoughts ever of writing a book, being an author, a speaker, coaching. It didn't occur to me. And I really had this epiphany after I met my now husband, and I thought, what happened here? I really wasn't too keen on love and marriage and men and dating or anything like that. That's when I became a true love skeptic. I thought, if I can get out of this situation, I'm never going to walk down the aisle and say I do again. Then it happened. It happened to me.
So it sounds like there's two really big pivot points here. One is there's a divorce, and the other is there's a big switch in your career. So, kind of which came first, and how did you decide on those things?
Well, the divorce came first, and it was really after I really decided that I had to have the courage to break the family vows. I think, you may have heard of people talking about we unconsciously make family vows. And I come from a very conservative religious family, and it's a big sin to get a divorce. And that's why I stayed in a situation for 2 decades that really increasingly made me miserable. And I just went on a spiritual path. I think it happened after I left a corporate security job. I was invited to leave, which really was like blew my mind that that could happen to me. And so I met this counselor, basically this woman. Actually, she helped with people making career transitions, and she was a very centered, balanced, spiritual person. And she had me begin to read a lot of books. I started reading Wayne Dyer, a lot of self help books, people like that, and I realized that my happiness was up to me. And I tried for so many years to get cooperation on fixing the things that were wrong in the relationship, and I didn't get any. And so I realized that you can't change anyone else, you can only change yourself, and that happiness is actually a choice. So I embraced my happiness, I embraced my health. I it just came to me really clearly that there was no fixing the situation. And when I thought about my life in 5 years or 10 years, I knew I couldn't do it. So I decided to save myself and my children, actually.
How old were your kids at the time?
My kids were 16 and 18.
Ah, so at that high school age.
Yes. And I had told myself, just hang in there, wait till everybody's out of high school, but I couldn't do it.
Mhm. Well, thank you for sharing that. I know it's not easy to talk about these times of our lives, but other
No,
people might be going through this right now and they might be
right.
feeling stuck or, they're in transition that, being in indecision or uncertain times is really difficult. And you like you were saying, you thought, well, I'll just wait till they get out of high school. Then you just keep putting it off, right? That's all you're doing.
Right. You're just kicking a can down the road that is just inevitable. And I just said I realized that my happiness was my choice and that this is not the life that I was meant to live and that I needed to have the courage. And it was hard. It was hard. My whole family was upset, of course. And I just grew so much in those years. I just grew into a really more confident person, and my views on religion and spirituality shifted completely from my childhood upbringing. And I was okay with that. It took a while, but I was okay with that. And then when that happened, I went through a sort of challenging divorce, and I was really done with love and men and marriage and dating. I told people I would never get married again as long as I lived. And then I
Oh,
remembered
wow.
what my mother used to say never. So I got that
Mothers are so
lesson.
wise.
Yes, it was really magical. It was a magical time. I wasn't looking for anyone. I was involved still in the corporate security industry and going to conferences. I was a volunteer leader, and the perfect man walked in, and everything I ever thought about love went out the window.
Wow. So what can I just ask what changed for you? Because it sounds like you were absolute and then all of a sudden, wait a minute, there's a crack in that door.
I think that what I write about the story of our meeting in my book. I think that I had really opened the door without knowing that I had opened the door, because I had shed my past beliefs and limitations and boundaries around love and men and marriage. And when the right one comes into your space, you can't help but recognize it. And I realized that even though the words had come out of my mouth that I wasn't interested in getting married, that my heart had been speaking different words to the universe. And so the
Mhm.
universal creative energy brought me my heart's desire. And that really was the impetus for the book. I started thinking, oh my gosh, I met this man 75 days after meeting him. He asked me to marry him. I said
75
yes.
days. Wow.
75 days. Yes. It was crazy. It was completely crazy. And if you would have told me before that this would have happened, I would have said, well, I don't think so. Um, but we had an immediate connection. It was like two magnets, drawn together. And we had been searching for each other without knowing that we were searching for each other. And so once we met and had this, well, he lived in Aruba and I lived in Utah. So we fell in love over the phone,
Mm.
and we would visit each other. He would fly. He was working in Aruba for an oil refinery, and he would fly to see me every 6 weeks. But we talked every day for many hours, and we fell in love over the phone. And we had nothing to hide because I wasn't looking for a marriage, and neither was he. But once we talked and got to know each other and met, we realized that we were meant for each other, and we got married. And then I started to wonder, what in the world happened here? Wow, what happened? What happened? Was this just something that happened to me? And by that time, shortly after we got married, I really was done with the career. And again, the universe, I'd been so unhappy in this job that I was in for a long time, and the universe brought me my heart's desire, and I was invited to leave. It was perfect.
Yeah. Sometimes things just line up, right? And it sounds like that's a big theme in your story.
Yes, the stars aligned, I have to say. And so I started talking to my husband and I said, I have no idea how we found each other. I want everyone to have what we have. So it came to me in meditation many times, and I ignored it many times, embarrassingly, for embarrassingly a long number of years. I ignored it. And then I decided, okay, I have to do something with the universe was giving me every signal that I had something to share with women. And I decided to find out. So I designed a research questionnaire. I spent a year interviewing women who are happily coupled or happily married. And in short order, I knew that those women had done the same things I had done, but we did them unknowingly. And there
Mm.
really was a recipe. There was an absolute path to love. And I just decided, okay, you don't know what you're doing. You have no idea how to write a book. You have no idea how to get published. No idea in this world, but you're going to do it anyway. So that's what happened.
That's what happened. Well, I'm curious too about this research questionnaire. I mean, how did you design that? And I mean, did you have any experience in that?
Well, just what I had learned in college. They make you do research projects in the master's degree program, and so they teach you a little bit about how to do that. And it wasn't super scientific. I just started asking the questions that I had wanted to know, and interviewing
Hmm.
women and saying, what happened? How did you get into this relationship? And I just started to see all these patterns, and I thought, wow, if someone had told me some of these things, it would have been very helpful.
Wow, very cool. So as soon as you started asking the questions, you started seeing patterns right away.
I did. I mean, and for example, one of the things is that we hear people tell us, well, love will happen for you when you stop uh, looking. And that's true, but it's only true if you're in the search mode. I mean, I meet women sometimes who are desperately searching for love, and they run home and they log on their computers to see if anybody's swiped left or right or whatever you do on online dating, and they go into depression literally every day if no one has indicated that they're interested. And so that's a really negative space to be in, and that's in the searching energy. And women who are in that become unhappy and they're desperately seeking love, and that's when you will not find love. That's what that really means. But you
Mm.
do have to take some action, but not from a place of fear, not from a place of lack. And I had learned that in studying the law of attraction, um, and reading authors like Wayne Dyer and Marianne Williamson, Louise Hay, lots of different. I'm a self-help book junkie, probably.
Guilty.
Yeah,
Also guilty.
yes. Yes, and so that's one of the secrets is you can't be desperately seeking what you do not have and expect to get it. So once I wrote the book, which was just a whole process, it was full of, oh my gosh, who are you? Who are you, this little girl from West Virginia who doesn't have a clue about writing a book? What are you doing? I would say to myself all the time, but I just got to the point where I thought, you know what, I'm just going to write. I'm just going to start. And I just started. I started the process. And then along the way, you get various freakouts because I took a class on how to get published. I always just try to learn what I don't know.
Mhm.
And I learned that, oh, publishers want you to give them the whole layout of the book. They want the table of contents. They want to know the chapter names. And I thought, oh, dear God, really? Uh, I have no idea. No idea. I just started writing. I started writing chapters. I had no idea in this world how it went together. And then one day I just decided to lay it down. I just laid it down. I said, I can't stress my brain out anymore about how this goes together in a book that will make any sense. I have all this material, I've written chapters. Stop.
So
And
it's more of a pause button versus you're like, okay, I think it's just done.
yeah, no, it was definitely a pause because I knew I had to put this together. I mean, I had reams of notes and I had been writing and writing, writing and writing, and I knew what I had to say was valuable. And then once I laid it down, I thought, okay, breathe. This will come to you. Ask for guidance from the universe. And within 2 days, boom, it just downloaded into my mind. I knew exactly how to organize it. I was able to give the material chapter titles. I was able to organize it. I was like, oh, all right, all right.
Wow. So is the message here sometimes you just have to hit the pause button
You
and you
do.
just have to
You do.
step away and let your brain clear and then, then you get back into what you would call flow or back in the zone.
Yes, absolutely. And then actually, I teach women this. I mean, sometimes people think that I'm a dating coach. I am not a dating coach per se. I will help you with dating later, but my coaching program is uh, 7 to 8 sessions. And I say eight because I added the eighth one actually in the last year or so because women like to know a lot about men and dating. So we take the last session and we cover a lot of that. But I ask women not to date while they work with me because they need to hit pause because the things that they've been doing to find love are not working. They just
Mm.
haven't worked, or they have gotten in relationships that have broken their heart or been terribly toxic. And so I say, let's hit the pause button. Let's make an agreement that you're not going to date anyone. And then when you graduate from my program, at the end of about 3.5, 4 months, you're going to be in such a different energetic space and you're going to know so much more. You're going to attract the right person for you to be in a love relationship with.
Oh, wow. Well, what's occurring for me is being someone who's in a creative space, uh, with the books that I create, the stories that I tell, and things of that nature. I can't tell you how many times I step away and hit the pause button, right? I'll be in a zone and things are going well, or I'll feel like, oh, I'm so excited to get started. I have all these ideas, and the ideas just don't materialize the way I want. But I do find if I hit the pause button, sometimes I have to go for a walk. Sometimes it is multiple days. I will
Hmm.
say the first book I created for my grandparents, um, I think that one ended up taking me 2.5 years. I actually paused for 6 months because I had a major technology problem and I was in denial that I had lost everything because my computer crashed. And what was really funny is I thought if I didn't really look for it, it wasn't lost. But if I started looking for it really hard and I couldn't find it, then it was lost. So 6 months go by, I come back to it, and lo and behold, I found it. It was really funny. So I was in this denial space. I wasn't looking for it. I thought all was lost because everything else was lost, but then there it was. So I don't know how to explain it, but
Oh, that's
I
awesome. That's
want to
perfect.
reiterate your and reinforce what you're saying here about the pause button, and it is something about the energy and a different place to come from something, and you can't force things. You can't force things.
Right. And that's what makes me sad when I see, especially a lot of the women I work with are in their 40s and 50s, and 60s, and they're really seeing the time ticking away. And they have so much love to give, they have so much life to give, and they get themselves so stressed out. And that's when it won't happen because you're in that energy that's not attractive. And so those are the women I love to help. And it just brings me incredible joy when I get an engagement announcement, a wedding announcement, wedding pictures. I know that I have changed women's lives. And in fact, so many of them say when they leave the program, you've changed my life. And that's all I need, really. It's an
Wow.
amazing feeling.
Yeah. Wow. I just might. getting all my heart's all warm on that note. That is so cool. What a great space to be in. I will say I get that feeling when at the end of doing a project with someone and now their life story is captured and they're kind of holding their photo book or they just have this different yeah, it's like something's complete now. Something's finished.
Yes, I can
So
identify.
I'm kind of going out on a limb here, but part of what I'm hearing you talk about, I think also relates to when you're in that job search or in that career search or what's my life's work search, that you're in a place where you're maybe not happy, you want to make a change, either you're feeling stuck or maybe you've been invited to leave and now you feel like you're in this place of transition. I almost feel like everything you're talking about applies to the workforce and maybe searching for that next right fit in employment as well as partnership. Am I way off here?
No, you're actually right on. In fact, the day that I was invited to leave that last job, I literally had to stop myself from laughing in my boss's face because I realized that for probably at least 2 years, I had been muttering under my breath about how miserable I was, about how I hated this job. I hated my workspace. I hated some of the things that I had to hear. I hated some of the toxic behavior. I just sent out so many negative vibes to this job. And I think that happens. And I would just tell people, if you don't want to get fired, don't do that. Try to find something to send out. But I didn't really know at the time, what I was doing. But by the time the job ended, that's why I really almost laughed in the guy's face because I thought, well, ask and you shall receive. I have
Mm.
been asking and I have now received. I am free from this place. And some of you crazy people who don't know as much as I do about what you're doing. So, okay. Um, I got it. I really got it. So there's a huge connection. And I would say to anybody listening to this podcast, if you sincerely dislike your job and really want to have time to find a new one, stop stop thinking negatively about it. Find something to like about it. Send positive energy to it. And also at the same time, send some positive energy out and say, my new job is waiting for me. It's coming to me. And it will happen. It will happen if you have the right attitude and the right energy and just free yourself from all the angst about it. And that's what I teach women. You've got to free yourself from this angst that you have around men, love, marriage, and dating because it's not helping you. In fact, it's blocking the creative energy source from sending you your heart's desire. And I learned that very personally. I was blown away. The things that happened in my relationship when I met my husband, they just could not have happened unless I had changed my energy.
Yeah.
And I knew I had done that. I wasn't thinking about it. I put no energy into I'm never going to get married again or any of that. I put no energy into it. I had embraced my positive, happy, healthy self. That's what I help women do.
Wow. And when I think about you were in a situation both with your career and with your personal life where you were not taking care of you, you weren't happy. You really had to almost shed that both of those things, right? To be in a place of I'm taking care of me now. I'm searching for what brings me joy, what makes me happy, and therefore now I'm ready for anything, right? Any new career, any new. You weren't looking for a mate, but it sounds like you were just you.
Yes, I was me and I was really open. Again, it wasn't a conscious acknowledgement on my part of wanting love, but subconsciously my heart was saying, this is what I want in a relationship. I just didn't recognize that. So
Mhm.
it took me, a while. And that's why I help women. I say, if you can become more conscious, you can marry your subconscious or your unconscious with your conscious, you can create the life that you want much faster. You don't have to be like me and some of the women in the book that I interviewed, that it took us bashing our head into the wall many times before before we could get where we wanted to go. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be that hard. That's what I tell women. People like to say things like, "Oh, it's so hard and there are no good men out there," and none of that's true, and it does not have to be that hard.
Well, I'm taking in so many messages from you right now, Gayla, that I can't even imagine. I've got, as an entrepreneur, I look at, I would like to have more clients and more projects. And so, is that not the same thing you're describing here?
Yes.
I'm going through and creating a resume to be on a corporate board and putting myself out there in that way to say, how can I add value to other corporations, at the board level. But one of the words I used was, oh, it's like winning the lottery to get on a corporate board. And that's not helping. I mean, that's not,
No, you're right. You're
that's
so
not,
right.
some might feel that way about love. It's like winning the lottery.
Yes.
So then if you think it's that elusive, then I guess it's going to be that way.
That's really true. That's really true. It's really important to shift your mindset around anything that you want and think only of what you want. Imagine yourself being in the role. Imagine yourself saying yes to a position or a romance. And that's why I really created the process in my coaching program. There is a specific process. I developed a workbook. There's lots of fun, not anything tedious, lots of fun homework. And I walk women through a process. And over the course of 3.5 to 4 months, I can shift the energy by this little process that I take women through. And it's a powerful process because at the end, um, women are just amazed at how what they said to me and what they wrote down on in the workbook. I've actually had women say to me, "Well, I didn't say that." And I just laugh because I say, "Well, let's go back here." I'm like, "Oh my God, I wrote that down." Like, yeah, you did.
Yeah, that's where your head was. That's where your space,
Yes.
your energy was. Wow.
But
Well,
I
that's so
find that
great that you got it.
telling people to change and telling people to just shift, to me, it doesn't really work. And that's why I think there's a lot of failure out there when people just tell you what to do. I show women how to do it.
How to do it.
How to do
Well,
it.
that's part of why I started this podcast is I was part of a mentoring circle where the knowledge base was all about storytelling. And it was if you had a challenge that you were going through, and this was in the business corporate space, you would share your challenge, but and then we didn't give advice was forbidden. You had to say, okay, I've been through a similar situation and here's what I did, here's what worked, here's what didn't work. And then the person can take away, well, how can they relate to the story? So that's part of why I do this podcast is I'm not here to give people advice necessarily as much as share stories that people have gone through so that again others can relate to that and go, oh, that that feels like what I'm going through. I hadn't thought about trying that, or I did try that, but I had a different outcome. And it's a whole different space to be in.
Well, Kathy, I mean, I think you're exactly right. That's why I had to get comfortable with sharing my story.
Mhm.
And that's the other reason I actually did the research project, and I share women's stories for every single chapter on my book. There's a story that one of the women told me. Sometimes some chapters have two stories, and I find that when people read the book, they really love the stories because it helps them to learn. Oh, that's sort of the mistake or the detour, the mishap that happened to that woman, and now she has love, and here's what she did.
Mhm.
That's what
Yeah.
was really fun for me. I didn't realize when I started out to write the book, I didn't realize I was going to be able to share these amazing stories. But as I was writing the book, I was doing the research project, and I just thought, oh my gosh, that's such a great story. That really illustrates the point that I've tried to make in the chapter. So there are like 17 or 18 stories plus mine in the book.
Wow. Well, I think I need to get your book because I think it's going to apply to me. I'm in a wonderful. I have found my true love as well. We've been married for 20 some years now, and been together for 28, I think, and married for 23. And it has been fantastic and has changed my life. And I had a divorce prior to that, as did he. But as I look at what you're talking about, it's a lot about letting go of things that aren't serving us, right? And then building and and finding the energy that does serve us. So I guess
Absolutely.
more from that perspective, just in life in general. So, how can people get your book?
People can get my book on Amazon.com. And in fact, I will let anyone know. I normally only work with single women, but the offer that I would like to make is anyone who gets a copy of my book and just takes a few minutes to write a review on Amazon, I will be happy to give you a complimentary coaching session for 60 minutes. So I really wanted to make that offer, especially during the times that we're in now. There are people who are lonely, there are people who are confused. And if you're, even if you're married or in a relationship and you're kind of wondering what in the heck to do to resolve any issue, I'm happy to spend 60 minutes set in exchange for a book review. How's that sound?
Wow, that sounds like a great deal. What's the name of your book?
The name of my book is The Art of Attracting Authentic Love.
Mm,
Gayla, all you really have to do to find it is just type Gayla Wick into Amazon and it will come right up. Um, and it really contains a lot of components of my coaching program. Obviously, doesn't have everything, but you can actually use that process, I think, to do what you're actually talking about, and it really didn't occur to me before. So the process you'll see in there is something that you can use on pretty much anything.
yeah. Wow. Well, I'm definitely going to get a copy and take you up on your offer. That thank you for sharing that with us in our audience. And as I'm looking at the time and looking at my that I could talk to you all afternoon about these things, as I'm just a naturally curious person. We probably should start wrapping up our call here. So our interview. Are there any words of wisdom, or I guess when you look back on your career, your life, where you are now, anything that you would share would be, like characteristics that you think, served you the best and what carried you forward?
I think even though it took me a while, I needed to learn how to accept change, and I needed to learn that really the only constant in life is change. And at the end of the day, all things come to an end. And I really should have just been able to breathe. And I would just suggest that anybody just breathe. We all have good times and bad times. And if something doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world. Um, Even if it's something serious, which was it's certainly devastating to go through a divorce for anyone. It's okay. You haven't made an irrevocable mistake in your life. You can have love. You can have the life that you want. You really can. You just need help. We all need help. I got help. It's okay. And it's a sign of courage to ask for help, actually. It's not weakness, and it's going to be okay. That's what I want people to know. And if you want love, you can have it.
Well, what a great inspirational last statement. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's a fabulous way to end this. Um, and I would like to, you know, reserve the right to interview you again at some point down the future, just to see how, maybe if book number 2 is in the works, or how life continues to turn out for you. It sounds like early in your career, there was a lot of confidence and moving forward into that space of being a police officer and into that space. Then you reached a point of it wasn't working for you, and now you're back to that very confident space. So it's so wonderful to hear your story. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation, Kathy. I've had a great time talking with you.
Well, thank you, Gayla. And listeners, if you enjoyed today's podcast, please subscribe below. And if you have any questions for me or for Gayla, I'll put Gayla's website and how you can contact her on my website, lifestorycurator.com, which is where you can post questions, comments. You can see and hear the interview also on that page. And that's where there's all the other interviews. So continue to listen. And at this point, we'll wrap up. Stay safe, I guess, stay home, stay well, everybody, and have a great rest of your week. Thank you.